The stars above the small outpost were endless. They stretched like a silent ocean, shining cold and bright, each one carrying secrets of worlds unseen. The outpost itself was not grand, not powerful, and not important in the eyes of the galaxy. It was just a lonely station on the edge of mapped space, forgotten by both governments and traders. Here a man lived alone. His name was Elias Kerr. Once, years ago, he had been an engineer in the great fleets of humanity. He had worked on ships that traveled between colonies, repairing engines, patching hulls, and keeping the machines alive. But that was before the war, before fire and steel had fallen from the skies, before he had lost the people he loved. Now, Elias lived in solitude, far away from the noise of politics and battles. He chose the outpost because it was quiet, because no one else wanted to live here. Every morning he would wake in his small cabin, stretch his arms, and walk the narrow halls of the station. The metal walls were faded, the lights flickered sometimes, and the air smelled of old filters, but it was home. He would drink a cup of strong black coffee from the machine he had repaired countless times, then sit by the viewport and watch the stars. His days followed the same rhythm. He checked the solar panels, cleaned the dust filters, calibrated the scanners, and logged reports that no one ever read. Sometimes a message from Central Command would come, asking if he was still alive. He would answer with one word: yes. Then silence would return. Though lonely, Elias had found peace in this routine. The silence was his companion. The stars were his audience. He read old books stored in the outpost's library drive, stories of Earth, poems, history. He even kept a battered journal where he wrote his thoughts, though he never expected anyone to read it. At night, he would climb into the cryopod for deep rest. The machine kept his body strong, slowing his aging and letting him sleep without worry. In dreams, he sometimes saw faces from the past, his brother, his mother, his lost comrades. But when he woke, only the quiet hum of machines greeted him. Elias told himself this life was enough. He had no enemies here, no friends either, but no one could hurt him again. But one night something changed. The sky outside the outpost darkened strangely. The sensors began to pick up signals, faint at first, then stronger. Patterns of sound, not human in design. The scanners blinked warnings, strange pulses of energy washing across the station. Elias did not notice. He was already asleep, locked inside the cryopod, dreaming his quiet dreams. The signals grew. The outpost trembled as shadows passed over it. Ships, vast, silent, and alien, drifted close, their shapes hidden in the starlight. They circled the station like predators, their engines whispering in tones no human ear had heard before. Honk. Station systems tried to call for help, but the signals were swallowed by interference. To the galaxy, Elias and his outpost had already vanished. Hours later, the cryopod released its seal with a hiss. Elias opened his eyes slowly, expecting the usual hum of the outpost. But something felt different. The air was heavier. The silence was broken. He sat up, rubbed his eyes, and listened. Footsteps. Not his own. Not the echo of machinery. Real footsteps. Measured, strange, and unfamiliar, moving through the corridors of the station. Elias froze. His heart raced. No one ever came here. No ship had docked for months. He reached for the wrench beside his pod, gripping it like a weapon, though he knew it would not be enough against real intruders. The footsteps grew closer. The lights flickered, then glowed brighter, as if responding to a new power source. Shadows stretched across the walls. Then from the corner of the room a figure appeared. It was tall, far taller than a human, with armor-like skin that shimmered faintly under the lights. Its movements were graceful but strong, like a predator that had no need to rush. Its eyes glowed faintly blue, studying Elias with calm interest. Elias's throat went dry. He had seen many aliens during his service, but not like this one. Its Shape was partly insect-like, with ridges on its head and long limbs that ended in hands sharp yet delicate. It carried no visible weapon, but its very presence felt powerful. Behind it, more figures appeared, surrounding the cryo chamber. They moved in silence, their strange eyes fixed on him. Elias raised the wrench, though he knew it was foolish. Who are you?" he asked, his voice rough from sleep. The tall figure tilted its head, as if considering whether to answer. Then in a voice that carried a strange echo, it spoke in broken but clear human words. "You are awake." Elias's mind spun. How could they know his language? Why were they here? "What do you want?" he asked, gripping the wrench tighter. The figure stepped closer, its movements slow, almost gentle. "Not harm," it said. "Observe. You, alone. Long alone." The words struck Elias like a hammer. Somehow these beings knew of his solitude, his years of living apart from everyone else. "I didn't ask for company," he muttered, though fear trembled beneath his voice. The figure leaned closer, its glowing eyes studying him. "Chosen," it whispered, as if the word carried deep meaning. "The Queen must see you." Before Elias could answer, the others surrounded him. They did not attack, but their presence was overwhelming. He lowered the wrench slowly, realizing resistance would be useless. "Queen?" he repeated softly, almost to himself. The alien only nodded. Elias was led through the outpost. The halls, he had walked alone for years, were now filled with these strange beings. They moved with order, with purpose, their strange armor gleaming in the dim light. They touched nothing unnecessarily, as if they respected the machines but did not trust them. When they reached the docking bay, Elias's breath caught. Outside the viewport hung a massive ship. It dwarfed the outpost completely, its shape both beautiful and terrifying, curved like the wings of some colossal creature with lights that pulsed like living veins. It seemed less like a machine and more like a living starship, alive in ways human ships could never be. The aliens guided Elias onto a transport craft, and within minutes, he was carried across the void. The massive ship grew larger and larger, until it swallowed the stars. As the craft docked, Elias felt his fear mix with something else, curiosity. Who were these beings? Why did they want him, a man forgotten by his own people? The shuttle hummed quietly as it glided into the docking bay of the alien flagship. Elias Kerr sat stiff in the narrow seat, his hands resting on his knees, his heart beating faster than he wished. Around him, the tall insectoid beings sat in silence, their glowing eyes fixed forward. They did not speak to him. They did not even glance his way. Elias tried to steady his breathing, but every second felt heavier. He had not been aboard another ship for years, let alone one built by an alien race he had never encountered. When the shuttle doors opened, light poured inside, white, clean, and bright. Not the cold flicker of his outpost. Elias blinked against the brilliance. "Go," one of the aliens said simply, its strange voice echoing in the chamber. Elias hesitated. His instincts told him to resist, to run, but where would he go? He was surrounded by creatures who could snap him in half if they wished. Slowly, carefully, he stepped onto the deck of the alien flagship. The sight before him stole his words. The docking bay was enormous, larger than any human carrier he had seen in his service years. The walls curved like the inside of a great cathedral, glowing with soft streams of light that seemed to flow rather than shine. The floor beneath him pulsed faintly, almost alive, as though the ship itself was breathing. Hundreds of the insectoid beings moved about the bay, their steps silent, their motions disciplined. Some carried crates, others tended to machines that looked like a mix of organic tissue and metal. Elias's eyes darted from one to another. He felt as though he had walked into a hive. His escorts led him through long halls. The corridors were not sharp and angular like human ships, but smooth, with walls that seemed grown rather than built. Strange symbols glowed faintly on the surfaces, shifting as they passed, as though the ship itself was aware of them. Elias whispered, to himself. This place, it's alive. One of the aliens glanced at him but said nothing. Finally, they entered a grand chamber. The air was warmer here, scented faintly of flowers and earth, unlike the sterile cold of most ships. At the far end of the chamber stood a raised platform, and upon it sat a figure unlike the others. She was tall, taller even than her guards, and her form carried both strength and grace. Her exoskeleton shimmered with a faint golden hue, and her head bore a crown-like crest that glowed softly in the light. Her eyes were not only blue but layered with silver, as if galaxies turned within them. Elias felt his throat tighten. This could only be the Queen. The guards around the platform bowed low. Elias did not move at first, unsure of what to do. After a long pause, he slowly bent his head. The Queen's voice filled the chamber, smooth and deep, carrying a strange harmony. Unlike the broken words of her soldiers, her speech in human tongue was clear. Human, she said. You are Elias Kerr. Elias looked up sharply. You know my name? I know much, she replied. Your outpost, your solitude, your years of silence among the stars. He frowned, uneasy. How? No one even remembers I'm there. The Queen leaned forward slightly, her gaze piercing. We remember. We watch what others forget. Elias felt a chill. He opened his mouth to speak, but the Queen raised a hand. You wonder why you are here, she continued. Why the Zalari come to a human forgotten by his own? The answer is simple. Her silver blue eyes glowed brighter. Because you endure. The words struck Elias in an unexpected way. Endure. He had never thought of his life like that. To him, solitude had been an escape, a way to avoid more loss, more pain. But to the Queen it seemed to mean something else. I'm just a man, Elias said quietly. A tired man. I'm no leader, no warrior. Why me? The Queen's voice softened, though it still echoed with authority. Because prophecy speaks of one who waits in silence, one who survives where none should, one who bridges what is broken. You, Elias Kerr, are that one. Elias almost laughed, though his throat was dry. Prophecy? You must be mistaken. I'm no chosen anything. I just fix machines and drink coffee. A faint smile touched the Queen's face. Not human, but strangely warm. And yet, you are here. The chamber grew silent. Elias looked around and saw the alien guards watching him, their expressions unreadable. The Queen rose slowly from her platform. Her presence filled the room with a weight Elias could not explain. She descended the steps, each movement measured and regal, until she stood only a few feet from him. Up close, Elias could see the fine details of her form, the golden lines, on her armor-like skin, the faint glow that pulsed beneath, the elegance in her every motion. She was both terrifying and magnificent. She reached out a hand, long and slender, tipped with claws sharp enough to cut steel. Elias flinched, but she did not strike. Instead, she rested the hand gently against his chest. You have lived with loss, she said softly. You have lived with silence. Yet you did not break. That is strength greater than war. Elias's breath shook. For years, no one had spoken to him with such weight, such meaning. He looked into her strange eyes and saw no mockery there, only conviction. What do you want from me? He whispered. The Queen withdrew her hand and returned to her throne. Her voice grew strong again. You will be tested, she said, to see if the prophecy is truth or shadow. If you are the one who can stand beside me, or if you are only a man who slept too long. Elias swallowed hard. Tested? What kind of tests? The Queen's silver-blue gaze locked on him. Tests of survival, of mind, of spirit. If you succeed, you will not remain a prisoner. You will be something greater. If you fail, you will be returned to your solitude. Elias tried to process her words. He wanted to argue, to tell her he wanted none of this, but part of him knew the truth. Solitude had not healed him. It had only kept him breathing. He whispered to himself, "What choice do I have?" The Queen tilted her head as if hearing him. "Choice is the heart of humanity. You may walk away if you wish, but I think you will not." Her words lingered in the air. That night, Elias was given a chamber within the ship. It was not a cell. Though guarded, it was far more comfortable than his outpost. The walls glowed with soft light. The air carried the same earthy scent, and a bed waited for him. He sat on the edge of it, staring at his hands. His wrench was gone, taken by the guards. He felt small in this place, a single human surrounded by a civilization he did not understand. Yet he could not deny the strange pull in his chest. For years, no one had needed him. Now, an alien queen had summoned him by name, calling him chosen. Sleep came slowly. His dreams were filled with shifting lights, voices he did not know, and the queen's eyes watching him like stars. When morning came, a guard entered his chamber. "Come," it said simply. Elias followed, his steps heavy but steady. They led him to a new hall, vast and echoing, filled with strange machines and glowing platforms. The Queen awaited him once more, her presence commanding. She looked down from her throne. "Elias Kerr," she said, "your first test begins." And with those words, his life of quiet solitude ended forever. The chamber was vast, almost like an arena. The walls curved high above, glowing with soft light, while the floor was covered with strange patterns that shifted as Elias walked across them. Machines stood silently at the edges, their shapes both mechanical and organic, as if the ship itself had grown them. Elias stood in the center, his heart heavy with unease. He had no weapon, no armor, only the clothes he had been given. Around him, a circle of tall Zalari guards watched in silence. Their glowing eyes made him feel small, like a creature under a magnifying glass. On the high platform, Queen Seralith sat upon her throne. Her silver blue eyes glimmered as they locked onto Elias. Her voice carried through the chamber, deep and commanding. "Elias Kerr, the first test begins now. You will face danger. You will face fear. But you will endure, or you will fall." Elias clenched his fists, his jaw tight. He wanted to argue, to shout that he was no soldier anymore, but he knew the words would be wasted. These beings would not listen to excuses. He took a slow breath. Endure. That word again. With a gesture of her hand, the Queen activated the test. Patterns on the floor shifted, glowing brighter, and suddenly the chamber transformed. The air shimmered, and the floor beneath Elias became rough stone. Walls rose around him, high and jagged. The temperature dropped, and a cold wind cut across his skin. Elias spun around wide-eyed. This is not real," he whispered. One of the guards spoke, its voice calm. "Simulation real enough to kill." The word sent a chill through Elias. The jagged walls cracked open and creatures emerged. They looked like predators, their bodies shaped like armored wolves, their jaws lined with sharp fangs. Their eyes glowed faint red as they locked onto Elias. Elias's breath quickened. He looked around desperately for a weapon, for anything. Near the rocks, he spotted a metal rod half buried in the dirt. He rushed forward, grabbing it just as the first beast leaped at him. The weight of the creature slammed into him, knocking him to the ground. Its teeth snapped inches from his face. Elias shoved the rod upward with all his strength, forcing the beast back. His arms trembled with effort, but he managed to strike its head. The beast yelped, sparks flying as its body shimmered into fragments of light before fading. Elias scrambled to his feet, gasping. "Not real," he muttered to himself, "but it can still kill me." 3 more beasts circled him. His grip tightened on the rod. His body shook with fear, but he forced himself to stand tall. The next attack came from behind. Elias spun, swinging, the rod with raw strength. The blow connected, knocking the creature aside. But another lunged at his leg, dragging him down. Pain shot through him as sharp claws scraped his skin. He roared in anger, smashing the rod down again and again until the beast shattered into light. His breath came heavy, sweat dripping down his face. The last two charged together. Elias had no time to think, only act. He ran straight at them, yelling, swinging wildly. The rod connected with one, stunning it, while his shoulder slammed into the other. He stumbled but did not fall. With a final desperate strike, he broke the last beast apart. And then, silence. The jagged walls dissolved, the cold wind faded, and Elias found himself once more in the smooth chamber of the flagship. His chest heaved as he leaned on the rod, which vanished into light a moment later. From her throne, Queen Sarilith rose slowly. Her gaze was calm, but Elias thought he saw something new in her eyes. Approval. "You faced fear," she said. "You endured." Elias wiped his forehead with his sleeve, muttering, "Barely." The queen raised a hand and the chamber shifted again. The ground rippled, transforming into a vast open floor lined with strange glowing machines. Shapes floated. In the air, puzzles made of shifting pieces of light, symbols twisting and rearranging themselves. "The second test," the queen announced. "Your mind." Elias blinked. "My mind?" "You were an engineer," she said. "You fix what others cannot. Show us." The floating puzzles moved closer. Elias studied the first one, a glowing cube broken into fragments. Strange, alien. Symbols pulsed across it. Slowly, he reached out. To his surprise, the pieces reacted to his touch, sliding into place when pushed. He frowned, focusing. His hands moved carefully, adjusting, turning, testing. Piece by piece, the cube came together, glowing brighter until it locked into a perfect whole. A faint murmur rippled through the guards. Elias ignored them and faced the next puzzle. This one was harder, a broken circuit of glowing lines. He crouched, studying the paths. It reminded him of repairing old starship engines. He smiled faintly, his hands moving with memory. He reconnected. The lines rerouted the flow and the circuit flared to life. One by one, the puzzles came, each stranger than the last. Some were shapes, some were sounds, others were patterns of light. Elias struggled with many, but he refused to give up. Sweat covered his brow, his muscles ached, but his mind pushed forward. At last, the final puzzle locked into place. The machines around him pulsed with light and the test ended. Elias fell back to the floor, exhausted but smiling faintly. "Not bad. For someone who fixes coffee machines." The queen's voice carried again. "Strength of body, strength of mind. But one more remains, the test of spirit." Elias groaned softly. "Of course it does." The chamber shifted once more. This time Elias found himself in what looked like a burning village. Flames licked the walls, smoke filled the air, and cries echoed around him. Figures ran past, Zalari, civilians smaller and weaker than the guards, their forms trembling with fear. One stumbled, a young child with golden eyes, trapped beneath fallen debris. The others ran past, fleeing. Elias froze. The smoke burned his throat and the heat pressed against his skin. The scene might not have been real, but the cries were. The fear was. He rushed forward without thinking. Dropping to his knees, he pushed at the heavy debris. His muscles screamed in protest, but he pushed harder. "Come on, move." The stone shifted at last, and Elias pulled the small alien child into his arms. The child clung to him, eyes wide with terror. Elias looked around. The flames grew higher. He coughed hard, struggling to breathe. He saw a path ahead, narrow but clear. "Hold on," he whispered. He ran, shielding the child with his body, weaving through the fire. The heat scorched him, smoke stung his eyes, but he did not stop. He broke through at last into the open. The simulation ended instantly. The flames vanished, the cries silenced, the smoke gone. Elias stood once more in the clean chamber, the child gone from his arms. He collapsed to his knees, coughing, his body shaking. The queen rose slowly. Her voice was quiet now, almost gentle. You protect others before yourself, she said. Even when you are weak, you choose to carry another. This is spirit. Elias looked up, his throat raw. It's not spirit. It's just what anyone would do. The Queen tilted her head. No, not anyone. Many would save themselves first. But you did not. The chamber fell into silence again. Elias sat there, breathing heavily, sweat dripping down his face. He felt utterly drained, his body bruised, his mind stretched, his chest tight. Yet deep inside, a strange warmth stirred. For the first time in years, he felt alive. Not just existing, but truly alive. The Queen's gaze held his, strong and unyielding. You endure, Elias Kerr, she said. You are more than you believe. Elias closed his eyes, whispering to himself. Maybe. The guards led him back to his chamber. He lay down on the bed, his body aching, his thoughts racing. He did not know what tomorrow would bring, but he knew one thing. His life of solitude was gone forever, and whether he liked it or not, something greater was waiting for him. Elias Kerr awoke in his chamber with sore muscles and a heavy mind. The tests of the day before still weighed on him. His arms ached from fighting the beasts, his head throbbed from the puzzles, and his lungs still felt tight from the smoke of the burning village simulation. Yet beneath the pain there was something else, an unfamiliar energy. For years, solitude had dulled him. He had lived like a shadow drifting through time. But now, his body and spirit felt awakened, sharpened. For the first time since the war, he felt the heat of life burning inside him. The door to his chamber slid open. A Zalari guard entered, its tall form blocking the light from the corridor. Come, the guard said simply. Elias rose to his feet, stretching his tired body. He followed the guard through long, glowing corridors, passing groups of Zalari who paused to watch him. Their silver blue or golden eyes studied him with curiosity, some with quiet respect, others with suspicion. He could feel it, the rumors spreading through the ship. The human who had passed the Queen's trials. The stranger who endured. They entered a grand hall Elias had not seen before. It was filled with long tables carved from living crystal, glowing softly like starlight. At the far end stood Queen Saralith herself, surrounded by a council of Zalari nobles. Their crests and armor were different from the guards, decorated. With jewels sharper in design, their eyes colder. The guard announced his presence. The human, Elias Kerr. All eyes turned to him. Elias felt the weight of their stares. He stood tall, refusing to bow, though his heart beat fast. The Queen's voice rose above the silence. He has passed the trials. His strength, his mind, and his spirit have been proven. A low murmur spread through the nobles. Some nodded in acknowledgement. Others frowned. One, tall with dark green armor and eyes like burning coals, stepped forward. My queen, the noble said. With respect, these trials mean little. He is human, a fragile species. To call him chosen is to weaken us before our enemies. Elias stiffened. He understood enough. He was not welcome among them. The Queen's gaze hardened. Lord Vare, you doubt not him, but me. Vare bowed stiffly, but his eyes never left Elias. There was no respect in them, only challenge. The council continued speaking in the Zalari tongue, their voices sharp and quick. Elias caught only fragments translated for him. They debated alliances, enemies, and the Queen's decision to bring a human aboard. Elias stood quietly, listening. He was not a leader, not a politician, but he understood the tension. The Zalari were not united. Some wished to follow the Queen's vision of strength through unity. Others feared it. When the council ended, the nobles departed, their eyes still filled with doubt. Elias remained in the hall with the Queen. She rose from her throne and walked toward him. Her tall figure moved with grace, her silver blue eyes, softer now than before. They do not trust me, Elias said quietly. They do not trust you, the Queen corrected. But they will. Elias frowned. And if they never do? Then they will fear, she replied simply. He let out a slow breath. You risk much for me. Her gaze held his. And you risk much by being here, yet you endured. For a moment, the hall was silent except for the hum of the living walls. Elias met her eyes and felt something stir within him, a connection, fragile but real. The days that followed were different from the trials. Elias was no longer tested in strength, but in understanding. The Queen invited him to walk the ship, to see how her people lived. He watched the Zalari tending to great gardens that grew inside chambers lit with artificial suns. He saw young ones being taught by elders, their voices carrying strange but beautiful songs. He even spoke with soldiers who had fought battles across the stars, their armor scarred but their discipline strong. The more Elias saw, the more he understood. The Zalari were not just warriors. They were builders, dreamers, survivors. Much like humans. Yet beneath the beauty, he also saw cracks, whispers of discontent. Lords who muttered behind closed doors. Soldiers who doubted their queen's path. One evening, Elias walked alone along a corridor that opened into a vast viewing deck. The stars stretched before him, endless and cold. For a moment he remembered his outpost, his years of solitude. He whispered to himself, "What am I doing here?" A voice answered, "You are no longer alone." He turned. Queen Saralith stood beside him, her golden crest glowing faintly in the starlight. She looked at him, not as a ruler looks at a subject, but as one soul might look at another. Their peace did not last. The attack came without warning. It was night cycle aboard the ship. Elias slept lightly in his chamber when the door hissed open. He awoke to the sound of movement, silent, quick. Figures entered, cloaked in dark armor, their eyes burning with hatred. Assassins. Elias leaped from his bed just as a blade of glowing energy slashed where he had lain. He stumbled back, heart racing as two Zalari assassins advanced. He had no weapon. His mind screamed at him to run, but the door was blocked. He grabbed the nearest thing, a chair, and swung it wildly. The blow staggered one assassin, but the other lunged. Elias fell to the floor, rolling aside just in time. Pain seared across his arm where the blade grazed him. He shouted, his voice raw. The assassins closed in. But then the chamber erupted, with golden light. Queen Saralith herself burst through the doorway, her form blazing with power. Her claws struck like lightning, her movement sharp and graceful. In moments, two assassins lay broken, their bodies dissolving into shards of light as their cloaks failed. Elias staggered to his feet, clutching his bleeding arm. The queen stood, tall, her eyes burning with fury. "They dare," she hissed. "They dare within my walls." Elias looked at her, stunned. "They came for me," he said hoarsely. She turned to him, her gaze fierce but steady. "No, they came for us both, to end what we might become." After the attack, the queen ordered an investigation. Whispers spread quickly. Lord Vare and his faction had grown bolder, their opposition sharper. The assassination had failed, but it would not be the last attempt. In her private chamber, the queen tended to Elias's wound herself. Her long claws moved carefully, wrapping his arm with strange golden cloth that sealed the cut. "You could have died," she said quietly. "So could you," Elias replied. Her eyes softened. "And yet you stood against them, though you are weaker than they." Elias gave a dry laugh. "Weaker, yes, but humans don't give up easily." The queen's lips curved in a faint smile. "That is why I chose you." Elias met her gaze. He wanted to ask why she trusted him, why she believed in prophecy, why she risked her empire for him. But the words caught in his throat. Instead, he said softly, "Maybe I chose this too. Maybe I just didn't know it yet." The bond between them grew in the days that followed. Elias no longer walked the ship as a stranger, but as one the queen had named. Some of the Zalari still watched him with suspicion, but others began to greet him, to nod in respect. He shared stories of Earth, of human battles and losses, of hope in dark times. In return, The Queen told him of Zalari history, the rise of her people, their victories, their struggles. Each story, each word drew them closer. But danger remained. The Empire trembled with division. Lords plotted in secret. Assassins lurked in shadows. Elias knew that his presence had become more than curiosity. It was a spark, one that could ignite unity or destroy everything. And deep inside, he realized something he could no longer ignore. His solitude was over. He was no longer just Elias Kerr, the forgotten engineer on a lonely outpost. He was between two worlds now, human and Zalari, past and future, silence and destiny. And the choice ahead would shape not only his life but the fate of an empire. The ship's corridors were silent, but the weight of the galaxy pressed down on Elias Kerr. He walked beside Queen Serelith, his steps cautious, his mind racing. The events of the past days, the tests, the council, the assassination attempt, had changed him. For the first time in years he felt alive, aware and important. Yet he also felt fear. Fear not of the Zalari, nor of the unknown, but of the choice before him. The Queen had summoned him to the central chamber, the heart of the ship. Here, she said, he would learn the truth of the prophecy, and the true meaning of being chosen. Elias followed her through glowing halls, walls pulsing with light as if the ship itself were alive. He thought of his old outpost, the quiet solitude of his former life. The years of isolation that had once comforted him now seemed empty. Was this what he had been waiting for all along? The central chamber was vast, larger than any human building he had ever seen. In the middle floated a sphere of energy, glowing with colors he could not name. Images shifted within it. Ships, worlds, battles, people. Elias recognized some of them. Others were alien, strange, terrifying in beauty. "This is the truth," the Queen said, her voice soft but powerful. "All we are, all we have been, and all that is to come. Look closely." Elias approached the sphere, eyes wide. He saw his own world, Earth spinning in quiet blue. He saw human colonies, struggling, building, surviving. And then he saw the Zalari worlds, vast cities of light, fleets of ships, planets rich with life. And finally, he saw something that made his heart skip. A vision of humans and Zalari together, standing side by side, united against darkness and chaos. "It is possible," the Queen said, "but only if the choice is made, only if one stands between the past and the future, one willing to bridge two worlds." Elias turned to her. "You mean me?" She nodded. "You are the one who endured. You are the one who could unite us. The prophecy names you, but the choice is yours alone." Elias sank onto a glowing bench, running a hand through his hair. His mind spun. He had never wanted this. He had survived wars, solitude, and loss to live a quiet life. Now, the weight of two civilizations rested on his shoulders. "What if I fail?" he asked quietly. "What if I can't do it?" "Then others will try," the Queen said. "But they will not have your endurance. They will not have your humanity. Only you can do this." Elias closed his eyes. He thought of the outpost of his old life, of the stars he had gazed at in silence. He thought of the Zalari child he had saved during the simulations, the Queen who had trusted him when no one else did, and the assassination attempt that had shown him how fragile their world could be. And he realized something. His solitude had taught him patience. His pain had taught him empathy. His endurance had made him strong. The Queen placed a hand on his shoulder. "You may return to your people," she said softly. "You may leave, and your life will be your own. But the prophecy, the future, and this empire will remain divided. Or," she paused, letting the weight of her words sink in, "or you may stand with me, not as a servant, not as a soldier, but as a partner, a bridge between our worlds. Humanity and Zalari side by side. Elias swallowed hard. The choice was simple yet impossible. If he returned, he would leave this world behind, leaving the Queen, the child, and the Empire to face challenges without him. If he stayed, he would leave his own kind, humans, for an alien civilization he barely understood. He thought of fear, of loneliness, of all the years he had hidden from the world, surviving only for himself. And he realized fear had no place here. Loneliness was over. He stood slowly, facing the Queen. His eyes met hers, steady and calm. "I will stay," he said, "not because of prophecy, not because you choose me, but because I choose this, because humans don't turn away from a challenge when they see hope." The Queen's eyes softened. "Then the future begins," she said. At that moment, the chamber changed. The sphere of energy shifted, projecting new visions, Zalari and humans building cities together, fleets patrolling side by side, children of both species playing under alien suns. It was not perfect. Challenges remained, but there was harmony. Elias felt a rush of emotion he had not known in years. Pride, hope, responsibility. He turned to the Queen. "What happens now?" "We prepare," she said, "for unity, for peace, for the future, and for those who will challenge it." In the following days, Elias began his new life aboard the flagship. He trained with the Zalari, not as a soldier, but as a partner. He shared his knowledge of human engineering, problem-solving, and strategy. In return, the Zalari taught him their ways, their language, and their honor. He walked among the people, learning their hopes, fears, and dreams. Some still watched him with doubt, but many grew to respect him. He was not just a human among aliens. He was a symbol, proof that endurance, courage, and hope could bridge worlds. The Queen remained his guide, his ally, and sometimes his teacher. They worked together, planning alliances, guiding fleets, and meeting with nobles. Their partnership was not always easy. Differences in perspective caused friction, but it was real, honest, and strong. Elias found himself thinking less of solitude and more of connection. He no longer feared being alone. He had found purpose. Months passed. Rumors of the human chosen by the Queen spread across the Zalari Empire and beyond. The humans who learned of him marveled, some skeptical, some inspired. Trade routes opened, conflicts lessened, and slowly the two species began to understand one another. Elias walked one evening along the observation deck, watching stars drift past the ship. The Queen approached silently, standing beside him. "You have done well," she said. Elias smiled faintly. "We have done well. You and I together." She nodded. "Together, yes. But also because you dared to endure. Because humans never give up. That is why you were chosen." Elias looked out at the endless stars. I understand now. Endurance is not just surviving, it's living even when the world is against you. And hope is what changes everything." The Queen's eyes glimmered. "And hope has chosen its champion." Elias laughed softly. It was a sound he had not made in years. Light, free, unafraid. Years passed. Elias became a figure known across the stars, not as a soldier, not as a ruler, but as a bridge between worlds. He worked tirelessly with the Queen, facing challenges, solving conflicts, and teaching both humans and Zalari to trust one another. Children of both species learned his stories, the human who slept in solitude and awoke chosen by an alien queen. His endurance, courage, and choice became legend. He never forgot his past. He remembered the quiet outpost, the solitude, and the nights spent staring at the stars. But he no longer longed for that silence. He had found purpose, family, and a place where his humanity mattered. And he had learned the most important truth. No matter how small, how alone, or how forgotten, a single human could change the fate of worlds if they dared to endure and choose hope. Elias Kerr stood beside the Queen one last time as the flagship drifted among the stars. Around them, humans and Zalari walked together, laughed together, and dreamed together. He reached out and the Queen took his hand, not as ruler and subject but as partners. "Together," she said. "Together," he agreed. And for the first time in his life, Elias knew he had truly awakened. The galaxy had witnessed the strength of humanity, and humanity had proven, once again, that even the quietest soul, the loneliest survivor, could become a beacon of hope for all.